All right. Well, howdy there, commissioners and citizens. Welcome to our special called meeting. We'll begin by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, thank you all for taking your time to be with us on a Saturday afternoon. You get a twofer if you want to stay today. We are also, in addition to our special called meeting, going to have a budget workshop, which is also open to the public. So, commissioners, I want to thank you all for your time on Saturday, and I would hope that we could be out of here by 6 o'clock with both meetings all together. So that's my aim on that. The subject of our special called meeting is to talk about a potential arrangement with the Blount Partnership. I was tasked by the Board of Commissioners to engage with the Blount Partnership to discuss about the Visitor Center in relationship to some of the activities going on there, in addition to, or I guess in the frame of the proposed legislation on de-annexation. So what I'd like to do, commissioners, if you'll indulge me just so that we can level set. I see a few new faces in the room today. I'll sort of give a little bit of a background and share what the most recent status is on that, just so that everybody's got the same set of information before we begin to talk about what a potential arrangement could look like. So, as y'all know, the Townsend Visitor Center has been under some construction and evolution in recent years. And so this Visitor Center, as we know it, we've seen quite a bit of construction there over the last couple of years, and that is construction that is adding a concession and restroom complex. And so the Blount Partnership and the Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority came to the City of Townsend Planning Commission in October of 2022 and presented a site plan. And I'm pretty sure that's the first discussion about, the expansion of the Visitor Center, although I think, folks were aware there was activities going on there leading up to that. But in October of 2022 was really the first time the partnership came and described what their plans were for expanding the Visitor Center, what we all know as a Visitor Center, into what they're calling now, they weren't even calling it this at the time, is the Townsend Event Center. And it was in October of 22 that our Planning Commission approved a site plan for the additional infrastructure that's been installed up there. So that includes the roads, the lighting, the plumbing, the building that you all see up there. Now, during that meeting in October 22, we weren't really recording, so we don't have any recordings like we have now up on our new YouTube channel to talk about, what was described, but I was at that meeting. As a matter of fact, I was just about 1 month in from being mayor at that time in October of 2022. And Mr. Brian Daniels from the partnership did come and had a presentation on that. And he did it right here on this very screen that we have behind us. And so he had pictures and talked about what the vision was and shared that with our community at that time. I'm giving you all this background because I think in some ways some folks would say, well, it's a surprise, what's happening there. But in fact, it's not a surprise. It was actually presented at that time. Now, what I'll also share with you is that the Planning Commission has a very specific remit, and it's very similar to what we have as a city council. And that remit is to follow the law. Okay, as Board of Commissioners, when we are adopting ordinances, we must follow the law. The Planning Commission has a relatively narrow scope. They must follow the law. And the law is in our zoning ordinance, and it has the requirements for a site plan, all the different things that must be presented in the site plan. If anybody's ever presented a site plan, you'll know we go through that with a fine-tooth comb. And that was what they voted on in October of 2022, was did that site plan meet the requirements, and that's all they can vote on. Okay? They didn't vote to endorse the concept or the idea of a place to host, large festivals at that time, but what they did do is that they looked at the site plan and voted on that. And I'll just mention that I was the only one that did not vote in favor of that site plan on the Planning Commission in October 22. But nevertheless, that site plan was approved, and the partnership began the construction to be able to transform that into what we're talking about today. So that's a little bit of the history on how we got there. Now, one of the things that people have expressed concern about as we put in place our special event ordinance, I'm not even sure we had the event ordinance in place at that time, have to go back and see the timing, but is how do we coordinate on events in the city? All right, tourism is vital to our economy. Most of the businesses in Townsend, not all, but majority of businesses in Townsend rely in some way on tourism. So there's no doubt about that. Tourism is an important part of our economy. At the same time, one of the things that we've learned through our community plan, through a very extensive survey and community engagement, is that people really like Townsend because it's the peaceful side of the Smokies. Okay? That's something that the Blount Partnership Tourism Authority, that's actually their slogan that they began and endorsed. As a city of Townsend has embraced that. If you look back here at our land use and transportation plan that was developed 2007-2008, it talks about the quiet side of the Smokies. We still talk about the peaceful side of the Smokies. This survey that I mentioned in conjunction with our community plan, what we found out is that our visitors want the same experience in large measure as our residents. Quiet, peaceful, proximity to outdoor beauty, cultural heritage. There's a lot of things that makes us different than the other side of the mountain. Now, how is that congruent with hosting festivals? Well, we've had festivals here in Townsend for a long time. People have often come here to enjoy different things, a water show, a passion play. You think about all the things in our history that we've played host to. So we have a long history in Townsend with sharing our beautiful location with which we're blessed with visitors. And the aim has always been to how do you have some coordination or harmony between people that lives here and people that come to visit us. We want people that will come to visit us be kind, respectful. They all come here to experience the same thing. If we mess it up, it's not going to be good for our residents. It's not going to be good for our visitors. It's not going to be good for our businesses. That's the reason the tourists come, is because they come to experience a particular aesthetic. They could go anywhere. They can go to the other side of the mountain. It ain't that far to drive over to the other side of the mountain. You can experience, that experience over there. But people come here for a certain thing, and it's the same reasons. It's clear that why people come to live here is very similar to the reason why people come to visit here. And our responsibility is to try to coordinate and make sure that we put as much thought as we can into that and do it harmoniously. The other thing we have to do as a Board of Commissioners, we have to follow the law. And so people that have property in Townsend, if you're a citizen and you come here to live, you have certain property rights. You can do certain things on your property. Anything that's permissible, basically you can do. If it's permissible in the ordinance, that's what you're entitled to do. And so whether you're a business or a resident, you have certain things that you're entitled to. And generally, we all want to be entitled to peaceful enjoyment of our property. And so what we're trying to do here, and what we were trying to do with our special event ordinance, is really to try to provide a mechanism for coordination. Now, the Visitor Center is not the only place in Townsend that hosts events. One of the things I've learned over the last couple of years is that there's probably more events that happen off-site from that Visitor Center property than happen actually on that site. So we have businesses that want to host events all throughout the city. Me and my family, we enjoy those events. We also enjoy, when the town is full of people. And so if we're trying to go into IGA, get a jug of milk or something else, we experience the same thing. And what I'll tell you here is that every commissioner in front of you experiences that, okay? They live here. They know what it's like. The residents, many people in this audience, y'all live here, you know what it's like. And so we need to be able to find some sort of way that we can coordinate and have a harmonious situation going forward. Now, I want to say something on behalf of the commissioners. Emotions are running pretty high on this thing. Our Board of Commissioners has to operate now in a new environment that commissioners in the past didn't have to necessarily navigate. Okay? Social media provides all kinds of ways that people can get on there and express their opinions. Okay? But there's a lot of misinformation, I'll tell you, on social media. Y'all have heard me talk about it. In the absence of information, people will generate all kinds of things. And so what I try to do here, is to tell the facts about things. And so be wary when you're on social media, to make sure that you've got the accurate facts. What also is quite challenging for commissioners, and I'll just tell you, is we're all volunteers here. Okay? Planning Commission, they don't get paid anything. Board of Commissioners would get paid just a little bit, I think $50 a month. But essentially, we are all volunteers, and we are all part of the community and trying to do our best to make good decisions for this community. I take great umbrage when I see people share things with me. I'm not very good on social media. I'm not on a lot of these groups, but they send me things. I have people come here before the Board of Commissioners. I take great umbrage when people accuse our Board of Commissioners of not acting in the best interest of the citizens or acting on any other basis than that. Okay? We've not got, big business interest. There's all kind of conspiracy theories you'll hear. We are doing our very, very best. And it takes a lot to put yourself forward for public service. I've had people resign from our volunteers, from our commissions. They just don't want to take it. Why do I want to, subject myself to that? So we need to have thoughtful discussion. I don't know how to navigate that on social media, but certainly here, I expect that people will have thoughtful discussion, respectful discussion, and I will do my very best to do that. But I want to speak on behalf of the commissioners. They are doing their very best to make good decisions. These things have a lot of facets that you have to discuss. We're going to talk about de-annexation legislation. We're going to talk about special events. We're going to talk about the event center today. But that's only one aspect of our whole city. And so when commissioners are trying to make decisions, they take on board even more than sometimes in their considerations than what seems to be a fairly narrow issue. How could you allow this or that? Well, we're trying to take on board all those things. And so we are fortunate to have a beautiful, peaceful city right now. We're not looking to destroy it. We live here, and we're trying to just make good decisions as best we can. So Sorry, I was a little bit on my soapbox, but let me tell you what the latest is. So we have this special event ordinance. We've been trying to implement that over time. We've been making decisions at every meeting on these different special events. We've approved just about every one of them. There's only been a few exceptions to the special events that we haven't approved, and I don't see anything wrong necessarily with our process, other than it does put commissioners in a quite public eye trying to make decisions. But commissioners must follow the law. Okay, our ordinance doesn't say that we get to weigh in on the theme of any special event happening in town. It just has to follow whatever the requirements are in that ordinance. And so I think many of the events that we've looked at and approved have followed up and met all the criteria in the ordinance. Now, there is the visitor center, and they have had this expansion up there, and I think it's pretty clear. It's with the idea so that they could host additional folks and additional festivals up there. In some ways, when it was presented, it was said, well, when we host an event, we have to get 100 porta potties. That's a whole lot of porta potties. And if you've ever been in those 100 porta potties on a hot summer day, you'll understand that that's not such a great experience if you're up there. And so, and nothing against porta potties, because that's important business too. We need those. But there was a rationale for being able to do that. And so there was legislation proposed on de-annexation because it was perceived that the city of Townsend was being unfair, not following the law on approving special events. Now, I don't think that's the case at all, because we've approved nearly every one of these special events. So I don't buy into that narrative that we've been over restrictive. On the other hand, it was proposed. It was not known to us ahead of time that it was going to be proposed in our state legislature. And I would wager to guess that I might have been one of the first people tracking that. That's my job as the mayor, part-time, but it's part of my job is to track that and to let folks know when that happens. There's a lot of stuff that goes through the legislature people don't even become aware of. When I ran for this job, 3 things: preserve the peaceful side, increase public engagement, transparency. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job on that to this point. So the legislation was proposed to be able to allow a tourism authority to de-annex their property from a municipality. It was written in a very special way that doesn't seem to apply to every situation, but only to properties that might be sort of on the edge of town. Our town is long and skinny, okay? And so if you take something, right along 321 and blow a big hole right in the middle of Townsend, you could potentially have catastrophic consequences to the city. So your city council has taken that into account, and at our last special meeting, we did take a look at that legislation, and we voted to not support that, and to encourage our state legislatures to not support that, okay? Because it's a bad idea. And I would say it's not only a bad idea for Townsend, but it's probably a bad idea for any other municipality, that legislation. De-annexation would not be a good solution. What this Board of Commissioners also discussed was encouraging, is there some way that we can put in place something that would facilitate the coordination between us and the visitor center, so that we would still be able to coordinate and have that harmonious balance between events and our citizens. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. The legislation did pass both of its initial committees. So we need to be wide-eyed about this, commissioners, because I think we need to consider the fact that it's a possibility that legislation will be adopted. Okay, it passed its initial committee in the House, it passed its initial committee in the Senate, and it has been scheduled and sort of subsequently delayed discussion in some of the subsequent committees. But, I think we should be very circumspect in our consideration that legislation could potentially be adopted. And if that's the case, then, of course, that becomes the law, and we'd have to follow the law. But, my guess is we're going to continue to oppose that while we talk about trying to find a better, more local solution. So, Commissioners, I shared with you, and I'm going to describe to our citizens here sort of where we are on trying to find a better solution than this de-annexation legislation. And so we have been talking, and I believe our counterparts at the Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Board have been working in good faith to try to come up with some parameters under which we might be able to operate and have that coordination. And so what an arrangement might look like between the city and the Smoky Mountain Tourism Board of Directors, the Development Authority, would be that we could modify our special event ordinance. So this wouldn't be giving them a free ride on the ordinance, but we could modify the ordinance such that we could allow for an annual permit application. That permit fee would be about $5,000. And let me just say also that it's pretty strange to try to negotiate any sort of an agreement when you're also trying to make sure that you're open and transparent. So this is from our perspective, and this is what we're sharing with the partnership. I'm not trying to represent anything that they've agreed to. There's not been an agreement yet, but this is sort of where we're at, Commissioners, in terms of what you've asked me to do. So annual permit application, permit fee $5,000. They would provide written notice for their different events up there, including the dates, nature of event, anticipated capacity. Large events would be defined as events with a capacity of 12,000 participants in a 24-hour period, and will be limited to no more than 2 large events in any 4-week period. The Tourism Development Authority would host no more than 15 large events annually. The Development Authority would not host any events on the week of July the 4th, the first Sunday in December, which y'all know is our Christmas parade, and one agreed upon weekend in April or May. During those times, the City of Townsend could utilize the Visitor Center to help do things. So like y'all will recall, Christmas parade, we used to line up around IGA. Got to be pretty challenging. Last couple of years we've lined up at the Visitor Center. It's been much better, I think. 4th of July, we don't currently do anything up there at 4th of July, but that would keep that open. April and May, we don't organize any events at the city, but I do recall that a lot of our residents like a certain spring festival and sort of miss that, and so that would give us an opportunity even to have a little respite on a particular weekend, or we could organize an event ourselves. Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority would not host any events longer than 7 days duration from setup to takedown. And they would also offer a first right of refusal to the fire department to coordinate parking at certain events. And as you all know, that provides a significant source of revenue to our volunteer fire department and helps defray the cost of fire protection for our citizens, which we'll be discussing in our budget. Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority or its designees will meet quarterly to discuss upcoming special events. So we don't have this mechanism now, but it would be good to be able to meet and talk about different events at the property. City of Townsend and the Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority would work collaboratively to identify specific items that are otherwise prohibited within the City of Townsend but might be permissible on a limited basis on the tourism property. Smoky Mountain Tourism Authority will request that Senate Bill 965 and House Bill 980, the legislation, would be withdrawn without a vote prior to the conclusion of the 2025 legislative session, and agree not to reintroduce the legislation absent a breach of the agreement. The agreement would include a 10-year term, and the City of Townsend Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority would work collaboratively on a joint public statement or joint press conference to jointly announce the parties' general agreement and future plans. So this is where we landed. Y'all asked me to reach out to them, and this is a lot of work, I think, resulting in good faith on both parts. I think we certainly continue to have ordinances that will need to be followed, and this does reflect some limitations that the partnership has agreed to put on their property rights, in order to be able to coordinate and maintain some sort of balance and harmony. So, Commissioners, I'm happy to answer your questions, but ultimately in this discussion what I would ask is if you would like for me to go ahead and move forward with developing an agreement based on these terms. So that's it, and I will ask for Commissioners to provide some input and questions at this time.
I can start off with some questions. Will the event organizer still have to come to the city to get an event permit, or will the Smoky Mountain Tourism Board approve any organizer they want?
They would have to come for an annual permit.
But the organizer themselves would not?
That's correct. The organizers would work with the Tourism Development Authority, and they would be working under their annual permit.
Okay. Now, when an event organizer comes currently, we make sure they have insurance to protect the city. We make sure that they buy a beer permit and report those sales so the City of Townsend can collect the revenue. They have to talk to the police about traffic control. Are any of those things going to be eliminated?
No, they'll still have to follow all those provisions.
So, but the city will still issue beer permits to them?
That's a good question. We probably still have to work through the regular beer permit process.
Okay, let me ask about ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
We have noise ordinance, we have flashing light ordinance, we have sign ordinances. Are all those ordinances to be followed, or are they eliminated?
Yeah, so this is a good question about ordinances. And so we do need to take a look at our city ordinances and how those would apply to special events. Now, we've had some discussion as different events have come before us. Many of those ordinances, I think, you mentioned, beer permits and noise ordinance. I think, those things need to continue to be followed. But some of our ordinances, and you'll know, Commissioner Jenkins, that we have ordinances against amusement type rides and things like that. Those ordinances were put in place, my understanding, to prevent a business from coming and establishing a type of business that operates 365 days a year, sort of like on the other side of the mountain. And whether or not that ordinance is still relevant for something that might be transient and only last 2 or 3 days would be something that we would need to take up in discussion, and that's what we would commit to do under this arrangement.
Okay. Let's talk about site plan. Let's say Smoky Mountain Tourism decides to build, a lodge on their facility. Do they have to come back for a site plan review, or are they going to get a free pass?
This would only pertain to events. It would not apply to a site plan.
Okay. So, and I'm asking questions people have asked me.
Yeah. This is my understanding.
Okay.
Now let me just remind that I'm grateful to get these questions and feedback, because we're still working to develop what this arrangement might look like. So we can make sure that we address that, but this is just my understanding.
Okay. So, and this is one of the questions I got from somebody. If we give them an annual permit so they can do things, will they be able to build additional freestanding signs?
This is this would be a revision to our special events ordinance. So it's not revising the sign ordinance, the lighting ordinance. We would still need to take up all those other ordinances. So this really is just about the events.
Okay. What about penalties for non-conformance? We sign this agreement and they do something that's not in the agreement. I mean, what's the penalty? What's the enforcement mechanism?
Well, I would imagine that just like the special events ordinance allows a permit to be revoked if you don't meet those terms of the arrangement, and there's some sort of a breach of that.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is there's a penalty clause for us. They'll reintroduce the legislation if we breach the agreement, but there's nothing in here that says what will happen if they breach the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they still have to follow all the ordinances.
Okay.
But that's a fair point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talk about Smoky Mountain Tourism Developments and its designee, and the City of Townsend its designee will meet quarterly to discuss the upcoming special events. What do we mean by that? What are we going to discuss?
Yeah, so one of the things that we need to do is to be able to coordinate these events. And so, we are blessed with a very nice location. People want to come up and have road race or bicycle race or all kinds of things. And so there is necessarily a need to be able to coordinate on those events, to let folks know, hey, we've approved, a big marathon, and you're going to have a bunch of runners coming through town, to be able to share information like that. So we've not ever had such a coordination meeting. And you might ask, well, why would you have a coordination meeting with this event organizer and not others? Well, the event center is a special purpose-built facility, and so it has unique characteristics. And those characteristics can cut both ways, but it is built to be able to handle a lot of traffic and a lot of people. They put the entrance, right there off of 321. And so, we have an opportunity to take into account the unique characteristics, and having a quarterly meeting would be able to allow us to, talk about that in conjunction with the other events that are going on in town. If there's been an experience, one of the things that we said when we started to do this, why would you have these event organizers come to the Board of Commissioners? Well, we're going to learn a lot of things. So we learn things about these road races that happen in town. And when you're having a road race, you need to be able to tell the runners where to go. First thing people want to do is they want to take a can of spray paint and paint all over our sidewalks and our roads. And so we learn pretty quickly that that's something that we have to manage. And I think, for those folks that do the road races, we've gotten everybody to sort of agree at this point that not put anything permanent down, to use people or removable things. And so we learn, and part of that quarterly meeting, if there's something that's happened at an event, we got the benefit of learning and say, hey, let's not do that next time, or let's do that a different way.
I got one more question. There's a sentence in here that I don't understand. It says the City of Townsend and Smoky Mountain Tourism will work collaboratively to identify specific items which are otherwise prohibited within the City of Townsend but might be permissible on a limited basis on the Smoky Mountain property. What's that mean?
Well, I think the example that I gave that came to mind is an amusement type ride. And so We have an ordinance that says you can't have, an amusement type ride. And my understanding is that ordinance is in place because we didn't want people to come and build a facility that operated 365 days a year with an amusement type ride. That's what we see on the other side, and that's fine for them, but maybe not so fine for us. Does that necessarily mean that you couldn't ever have an amusement type ride in the city even for one day, even for 1 hour? And so there might be some things in our ordinances that we could potentially think about that would provide some flexibility, because this is where we get sideways in terms of trying to approve these things. We have ordinances on the books that are probably there for a consideration of a different thing than what might be a transient type of activity. But it would be something that we would discuss in this Board of Commissioners.
Real quick, does that mean fireworks? Because I know they came and asked for fireworks. Is that something?
I think that might be a good example of another one we'd have to think about. Okay? Fireworks are only allowed 2 times a year, I think, in the city. Does that mean you can't ever have a sparkler or something as part of a special event? Well, that wasn't exactly the intent when we put that in place, so that might be another example of one that we could discuss. I mean, we have to be practical and thoughtful about it. If we're going to be able to ask them to do stuff, we have to similarly be able to. But we need to look at these things one by one so that we don't inadvertently, create a situation that is unintended for our residents. So,
Okay, here's one more.
that's what that sentence means.
When you started this, you talked about that there were a lot of events in town. A lot of them aren't even on this property. Are those other event holders going to be put at a disadvantage if we have this agreement?
Well, I think it probably still makes sense to have our special events process in place, because while this facility has unique characteristics. So it's built for, to consider things for traffic and public safety and things like that. We still need to be able to look at special events that happen throughout the city. I don't see anything in here that necessarily disadvantages other events that might be held. And so we want to be fair, and if we're thinking about, for example, should we have a special exception for a particular type of activity, something that's generally, not allowed by an ordinance, then we should be thinking about, whether it would be fair for other event organizers as well. So we want to be fair.
It seemed like just another sweet dance, but then the music.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to consult with any legal people about this, and I wish I had, but I haven't. So that's all my questions.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner Hedrick?
Just a couple of things. I know since Myers Road, we have a lot of people that live down Myers Road. Didn't know if we could add something in there to where we could, make sure that the residents can access and no blocking of Myers Road so that they can get through if they're doing unloading, offloading, setting up and stuff. Put a provision in there to do the most that we can for that. And then maybe at some point, if we're having more festivals, nobody wants them to be annexed, and I think every citizen will say 15 large events is a lot, but if they de-annex, we don't know what we're going to get. So this, but if the partnership could possibly share some of the proceeds from events that they get to help with our revenue, or based on the number of people that come, add an additional fee for each person and have that
Yeah.
go to our revenue.
Yeah, thank you for that. I will say that we explored that. That was among the things that I initially explored. It gets to be a little complicated based on the way that their business model for these events in terms of revenue sharing or something like that. But I'm happy to go back and to continue to explore that, to see what might be possible. Let me talk a little bit about Myers Road. Now, Myers Road is a very special and unique situation because it runs right there along one side of the visitor center property. And so subsequent to our last meeting, I had some discussions with Chief Condi. Myers Road is still our responsibility, and we have a responsibility to make sure that people that lives up there can get up and down that road easily, unencumbered. And so we are going to announce very shortly a new process for giving hang tags to folks on Myers Road. So you all are getting a little preview of that, but we've talked about it for some time. But I think we're actually moving pretty closely to being able to issue hang tags, and that way whoever is monitoring that intersection will know that that's a Myers Road resident and be able to quickly and efficiently get them up Myers Road. Doesn't mean that we don't need to continue to monitor that. I'm only saying that that's something that we're going to put in place for this coming year, and we hope it will continue to help. But if there needs to be additional things to monitor Myers Road, we need to make sure that we do that. I don't know that I would put that in the arrangement, but I would definitely say that that is our responsibility, and Chief Condi agrees that we need to be able to meet that. So if we're entering into an arrangement with these events, we need to be able to make sure it's good access, easy access for folks that live on Myers Road at all times, especially during the events.
Will that include our left-hand turns? That's been the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to let you know, Chief Condi did order the hang tags, and they came in late last week, so I'll be making a post to put out on social media for anybody that lives off Myers. They can come in and pick one up.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get ahead of the Townsend Police Department on that, but it is some good news and relevant to your comment, Commissioner Hibbert.
Can I ask about another question about Myers Road? I assume the site plan we approved allowed some sort of access to the grounds off of Myers Road. Was that intended for general traffic or just for event support vehicles? It seems like it shouldn't have allowed the regular traffic in and out of that. It should have been on to 321 only.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know what was approved.
The main access in and out of the visitor center is on 321. So there should not be any, my understanding, any sort of regular visitors coming in through any other route than that entrance on 321.
So could we get that added to this so we minimize the inconvenience for the people that have to use Myers Road?
Well, I would suggest that that's still our responsibility, and we need to make sure that we do that, and I think we are meeting that responsibility. This arrangement is relative to special events, and so that's really a general traffic, but I'll make sure that we address that in some way.
Can I address that?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Martin.
Most of the time during a large event, those access roads may be open before everybody else gets there for vendors to come in and get set up off Myers Road occasionally. They have done a really good job now of trying to get everybody there early and set up beforehand, but sometimes there is one or two event that are there for the event. They're not they're participants of the event. Sometimes they may come in those side gates, but most of those times during a big event, those side gates are closed at the time the event starts.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has been the last 2 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, my understanding, and I think we have had maybe one experience to the contrary, is that back gate that's up there is for emergencies and not for regular use for, letting traffic out of the events up there. So everything should be coming in and out. I think there is some handicap access stuff that comes, as you go into the old visitor center, but we'll be sure and monitor that and ensure that is used accordingly. Okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
Have you reviewed this with the city attorney?
City attorney is involved in this and will, look at whatever legal arrangement. City attorney be the one that will draft the legal arrangement. What I'm asking for today, I guess, is your agreement to enter into an arrangement that has these terms in it.
Before I would agree, I'd like to see the final agreement. This is fine, but it doesn't really tell me what the wording is of the final agreement. And as an engineer, I want to read it.
Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions?
Already answered mine.
Okay. All right.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the deciding factor of a 10-year contract with him instead of like 5 years, or was there something that they were concerned about, and wanted to do 10 years, or was that just a number thrown out there?
No, that number actually, we suggested something lower. They suggested something higher. They want to have, as much certainty as they can, but it does need to be at a certain period of time where we'll be able to reevaluate. And so one of the things that, I would say is that visitor center is just like, building a house. You built the house, and then at a certain period of time you want to start to occupy it. But it takes you a little while to move in and to get settled. And so I don't imagine, they're going to, go from the current number of events to, some, number of events, rapidly. It takes time to get these things organized. And so 10 years, I think, or some period of time, makes sense. But we want to make sure that we can be able to reevaluate it. It's not something that's put in place in perpetuity. So we did have some discussion back and forth on that number, and that's where we landed, was 10 years.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe I missed it, but this says no more than 15 large events annually. How many small events?
Well, that's not limited, and that would not be limited in this agreement. And I don't think it's the small ones that give us any pause. We've had a number of events, in fact, probably most of the events that happen up there, you don't even know that they're happening. It's not even as many people as in the IGA parking lot. So if they wanted to have a smaller event, it's the big events, I think, that really are the ones that, we need to make sure that we're coordinating on. Okay, commissioners. We do need to get on to our budget workshop, but I will open for just a moment to see if we have any public comment on this. Yes, ma'am. Please come ahead, identify yourself, and if you could, just we'll try to keep the comments to less than a couple minutes.
My name is Pam Johnson, and I am not a registered voter for the city of Townsend, but I do live in the Tecalichi Cove area, and I have lived here my whole life. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for all of our commissioners for the time that you do give for our community. And I also would like to offer an apology. Even though I've not been one of the ones that's been on Facebook and bad-mouthing everyone, but that gives a bad taste in a lot of people's that lives here in this community. That's not what we are. That's not what Townsend has always been. That's not the community I grew up in or that Becky grew up in. And working together for this and trying to find a compromise, even though we may not agree that we want 15 festivals, I kind of think that's a lot of festivals. But I'm also part of a business family, so I see both sides. But if we don't find a compromise and this passes and everything in the de-annexation is passed through the state, what's going to stop Sadie and Dawn from leaving? What's going to stop Mr. Acker from de-annexing? What's going to stop Becky's family? What's going to stop other people in the town from applying for de-annexation? How are you going to have a city if that passes and her family leaves, or they take their business out because they want to run their business the way they want to and not the way the city of Townsend wants it done? We cannot have a city if everything de-annexes. So, but I do appreciate what everybody has done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I have most of mine are questions.
Ms. McAvoy.
Hi, I'm Tommy McAvoy. I live in the city. Thanks everybody for being here. I have a couple questions for your proposal. You said 7-day events, and I realize they have to set up, but 7 days covers 2 weekends. Does that count as 2 of the 15? So just a question. When you say large event, what is your attendee parameter for a large event? I guess I'm asking that question. Is it more than 5,000? Is it more than 10,000? Is it more than 15? Because if we're going to have a festival every weekend and we're not calling 5,000 people a large event, that's a pretty large event for a city of only 500. That's at least, I don't do good math, but 10-to-1 ratio. So we need to define what the large event parameter is for attendance. I want to concur with her. I think 15 large events is an awful lot. But also to kind of piggyback what Joanne Funk on the Planning Commission said, recognizing that Townsend is the third in Blount County for sales tax generation, and to find a way that we can get more money to help Townsend. And there were suggestions from other people, Mr. McNeil, Austin Stowers, people that were talking about from those sales tax directly going to things like our parks, our little peoples, things like that don't have to come out of our city budgets. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. McAvoy. I will just read here. Large events defined as events with a capacity of 12,000 participants in a 24-hour period will be limited to 2 large events in any 4-week period. And the Development Authority will not host any events longer than 7 days duration from setup to takedown. Usually takes about a day, I guess, to set.
That counts as one event, even though it would take maybe 2 weekends.
Yeah, 7 days. Okay. And appreciate the point about the revenues. One of the things, I'm always learning about this, and I've learned a whole lot over the last few weeks about tourism development authorities and about how our particular, I won't even say how the Smoky Mountain Tourism Development Authority operates. And so there are additional issues I think that could still be improved outside of what we're talking about here in terms of special event permit. Yes, sir.
All right.
Sorry.
My name is Jim Comish, and I live in the community. Commissioner Martin had brought up the question or the concern of the 10-year period, and I too think that's somewhat long, but I realize it is a give and take. May I suggest that you go back with the initial 5-year with the option for 10, that if it follows all the requirements, and then it would continue to go for 10 years. But if not, then we would have the right to stop it at 5.
Appreciate that suggestion. Please.
Hi, John Wills, live in Kensal Springs. I'll try to keep my comments brief. First of all, I want to second the comment about thanking all of you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, for your service. I know it's not easy, and shame on me for this being my first meeting, so I'll have to show up more. A couple of comments. First of all, I'm really pleased with your opening comments and the position that the commissioners have taken in terms of reaching across the aisle to the partnership. I think that's exactly the position I was hoping that Townsend would take and that our leaders would take by reaching across the aisle. So thank you very much for that. I also am an engineer, and I like to see the fine print. So I agree with your comment, Commissioner Jenkins, and there is some fuzziness. I mean, the sign ordinance and how some of that stuff, I think we've heard that in the questions. So I would look forward to that fuzziness kind of being wrung out. Regardless of the details, I think that it sounds like a very generous first offer, right? Or extending of an olive branch to try to find a solution. That's just my first take on hearing it for the first time. I would request that you consider adding some language that in addition to a quarterly sort of coordination, that there be some sort of more regular meeting of our commissioners with the partnership in order to build relationships and maintain relationships. Maybe that comes on after a big event review session or something of that nature. Maybe that's a barbecue, maybe that's something, but something to build relationship, because I don't know what's happened, but clearly there's been a total breakdown of relationship to have this legislation appear at the state level. So I would just hope we can all, not only quarterly, but on a regular basis, sort of have those relationships built. So I'll end on a question, and sorry for being so long. A process question. So you have this in front of you. It's not clear to me if the partnership has read this at this point, what their initial response has been, how their response then, and maybe we don't know this, how their response then gets coordinated with Representative Stennett and Senator Hatcher in terms of the actual mechanism of the bill. I mean, Ways and Means has the bill in front of them on Tuesday, right? And the House, Representative Stennett, rolled it to next week. And I didn't know if that's because conversations are happening. So any light you can shed on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wills. I appreciate those comments and feedback. We are, of course, in contact with our state legislators, the bill sponsors, Tom Stennett in the House and Tom Hatcher in the Senate. I think it's no coincidence that those bills have been rolled to subsequent week to give us some time to have some discussions. Part of the reason I've asked commissioners to come in here on Saturday today is because it is time sensitive. And as many of you all know, the legislative session in the state of Tennessee is pretty short. And so we're actually starting to get near the end of the legislative period in the state of Tennessee. So we don't have a lot of opportunity to have a lot more back and forth. We have had back and forth with the partnership to get the parameters that I've shared with commissioners here today. And so that's what I can share with you on that. Christine?
I'm Christina Delaney. I just kind of curious, last time you talked, Brian Daniels had said there's no talk of ending the legislation, so I'm wondering what the background is, how we got to where we are, and is there any room for negotiations at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Christina. What I can share is that, and I've tried to be as transparent as I can be with you all about the conversations I've had with Mr. Daniels, and you're right in remembering that there was a time when I reported that they were not interested in pulling back the legislation. But we did adopt a resolution. This Board of Commissioners adopted a resolution not supporting the legislation, but also calling for some discussions with the partnership. And I think that's what you've seen the reflection of. So, I think there's folks are trying to give us a space to see if we can get something worked out. And that's how we are where we are. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if we don't make progress or we can't work something out, that legislation would not continue. As Mr. Wills pointed out, it is scheduled, I think, both in the House and the Senate on Wednesday. Jen Johnson, and then
Hello.
very nice to see you, Jen.
Nice to see you too. And thank y'all. I echo what Ms. Johnson said for everything that all of y'all are doing and have done. Just a quick question with the proverbial social media and rumors and how they get started. Rhetorical question. Let's say that you're negotiating and whatnot doesn't happen. And one of the little rumors that's out there is that basically we all might end up, as residents, end up paying and fitting the bill, and we might get stuck with some nice, pretty property taxes, quote, through the city. So I was wondering, through your negotiations with the county, and maybe they do give you finances, I'm not 100% sure on that, I don't necessarily attend your budget meetings. Maybe they do that to help offset the sheriff's department, but not necessarily always for the Townsend Volunteer Fire Department. They might help out because it's a county road. But as far as the city is concerned, and possibly, potentially, is there a plan B, C, or D if this happens? And people say, well, what's the point in having a municipality if we can't afford it? And is there some possible way to negotiate on the front end, like say, hey, if this is going to happen, because it kind of happened behind your backs, if this is going to happen, can we negotiate with the county that you take some of our already that we pay as residents property taxes and give that back to the city? Rhetorical, just a thought, don't know anything else, but somebody asked me to ask the question, so I did. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. I'll just say that there's a number of considerations in terms of our budget, and if folks want to stick around, they can hear all the details about it in our budget workshop. But we are supported primarily by sales tax. We do not have a property tax for the city of Townsend. I do not support that, and I hope that we can find a way to leverage this revenue that we do have from tourism to be able to continue to support our city services, which includes our police department, 24/7 coverage, police department. We do not have a fire department as part of our city government, but we do work very closely with the Townsend Volunteer Fire Department, and you can kind of see how that's a little bit intertwined with the discussions. What we don't get is the benefit of our hotel and motel tax. And so I will say that Townsend is probably number 3 on the contributors of hotel and motel tax that goes to the Blount Partnership to build that facility. And so it's important to recognize that. And I think we are going to continue to look at our revenue structures in the future and to see if there's ways that we can have a more sustainable revenue path for the city that doesn't involve a property tax. Thank you. Other?
Hey, my name is Sam Duffman. I'm from Maryville. My only dog in this fight is I just kind of get annoyed when rich people use their power and influence to push others around. And so when this started going, I used to be real active in politics. I've basically been asleep for like 10 years on the subject. But when this started going, I started getting some phone calls, people consulting with me on things. And I don't know how much of it came back to you. But first of all, that resolution that you passed was probably the best move you've made by a long shot, because if you put yourself in the shoes of one of these representatives, like say over in West Tennessee, for example, and a lot of these are good old boys too, right? And they get this bill on their desk and it says, a county can de-annex a tourism authority from the city as long as it's contiguous. Sounds good to me. I mean, might as well pass it, yes. But as soon as somebody sheds some light on it and says that's what's going on, what they all of a sudden realize is Blount County is trying to involve the entire state of Tennessee in local affairs. And so that's what's caused this thing to start getting delayed. And I think Blount Partnership is suddenly approaching you wanting a contract because all of a sudden they just lost leverage. They lost a lot of leverage when that bill started stalling, and so I think you should recognize that. Also, it looks to me like Blount County is trying to, I'm sorry, Blount Partnership, I need to rephrase, is trying to become a middleman in something that potentially you could be doing directly, and that's authorizing these various and sundry events. In fact, that's one of the big things that Trump's accomplishing right now is he's cutting a lot of middlemen out that have been taking money along the way. And you mentioned the contract terms. 10 years sounds like a long time. I was going to suggest that, first of all, not even doing a contract at all. Just encourage them on an event-by-event basis, come to you for everything. But if you wanted a contract, shorten this thing as much as a year. And here's one of the biggest reasons why. If a really short contract would encourage them to be a good player, to continue to play nice with you, because if they run roughshod over you on all sorts of stuff, then you just don't renew the contract after a year and they're out. Whereas if they play nice that first year, you're going to learn some things. You might want to start taking some notes. Okay, tweak it here, tweak it there, and then 365 days from now, you could have a different agreement. Because all of a sudden, I think you guys are in a lot better position at this point. I think that's why they're coming to you. And then there was a question about if the contract's breached, what are the penalties? And of course, they would reintroduce the bill, but they're struggling to get it through all of a sudden. So here's a suggestion for them. If they breach the contract, maybe they should be subject to a public audit, and you guys get to pick the auditor. And here is why I'm saying that. Most people don't understand what Blount Partnership is. It's a private corporation that has been incorporated by two government agencies, the Industrial Development Board and the Tourism Authority. Now, they've also got Chamber of Commerce and a couple other people in there as incorporators. But what kind of loophole is that a government can sit there and create its own private business, give it $2.5 million per year, and then nobody gets to see what's going on behind the scenes? All we have is a little nonprofit tax filing that comes in that shows us that Brian Daniels is making $299,000 a year. He's making a lot of money off of Blount County taxpayers. So I think that would be a nice little breach of contract clause, is if you break this contract, we get to audit you. Some thoughts?
Thank you for your comments. Okay, Commissioners.
May I have an
Oh,
opportunity?
yes, please.
I promise I will
Yes,
not
please.
linger too long. My name is Sandy Hedrick, and one thing that I keep stressing to you all is how long I have been here and how much I have learned of what goes on in the city of Townsend. In the late 70s, early 80s, the Visitors Bureau was created. The World's Fair was coming to Knoxville. They established a little log cabin down at Tuckaleechee Village to take care of the visitors' transportation issues. Then there was a need, because Townsend did have a Chamber of Commerce all its own, to have a visitor center as visitors began to get more. So tourism, and there's some very important people in town that made that possible. That's another conversation. But knowing that people move here to Townsend because they like the way it is. There's zoning in Townsend since 2008, maybe, I don't know, a long time. And that's the reason Townsend's like it is, because there's zoning in place. And that's the way for you guys to continue controlling what goes on in the city. I want to make mention that the city has had some personal input. I've been at meetings where I don't like the noise. I don't like the traffic. Well, that's where your attorney advised you to be very careful, and I also would say he was pretty right on. Think about Knoxville, Tennessee. They have University of Tennessee ball games. They have lots of traffic. They deal with it. It's special events. Think about the Clayton Center. They have special events, lots of traffic, lots of different things that happen. That's important. I want to mention that back in the early day of trying to establish Townsend as a business community, the Chamber of Commerce of Townsend and the business community established that peaceful side of the Smokies slogan. Townsend invented that. And the reason that that was invented by the Townsend Chamber of Commerce and then picked up by the Blount County Chamber of Commerce back in the old day, the business community was trying to identify itself different than our neighbors across the way. That's where the peaceful came from. Now, a lot of people have moved in here unaware of that and the fact that, oh, I like Townsend the way it is. Well, they're very uneducated. They are very I don't know another word. Anyhow, they think they can just keep it like it is. Well, it's not going to happen if it's going to be successful. So being uneducated, uninformed, a lot of the public has no idea of what it takes to run a city. And if you guys being very accommodating to citizens, forget that you're involved here for the city of Townsend, what's best for the city also, perhaps sometimes first over residences, because that's the lifeblood of the community. In the old days, when the city was more involved in events, Myers Road was well controlled through the permit. It wasn't a hang tag, it was just a simple piece of paper on the dash, and then you got away from that for whatever reason. I do not know. But that's a good thing. I've got some other notes, but I won't keep on so much. But just to think about where we've come from when we're making decisions about where we're going, because it is important.
Thank you, Ms. Hacker. Okay,
Gentleman in the back had stood up a long time ago with the the Tennessee on his shirt.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a couple more comments and then we'll wrap it up. And I do need to ask commissioners for their decision. So,
my name's Robert Snyder, and I basically had a question. Do people come to the partnership and say we want to have this festival, or do they organize a festival? I mean, where do they originate from?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect it could be some of both.
It is some of both. That is correct.
Well, I've been to some festivals that I thought would really fit in good with this. Did they ever take, ideas from people in the community on, say, hey, we're open to some ideas that you think would fit in with the peaceful side? I mean, I've been to some in Vincennes, Indiana. They do a big Revolutionary War. They call it rendezvous, and people set up and they sell leather goods and armed goods and stuff that's all, fit in with that period. Mm-hmm. I think there's some things that they could do that would fit in with, the peaceful side.
Yeah.
So,
I think there could be a whole lot of good suggestions that would fit in with our theme and our natural beauty and our cultural heritage. I would encourage you to reach out to them and make those suggestions.
So you suggest reaching out to what partnership, myself?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think you could do it. Thank you. All right, last one.
I'd like to say one thing. I'm Don Hedrick. Sandy's my wife. She don't remember, it was the mid-'80s when we had planning and zoning. And at that time, we didn't want to identify ourselves whatsoever with the other side. And when we drew up that zoning ordinance, like you said, Mayor, it prohibited water slides, any kind of a carnival atmosphere. And that's how we stayed like this through the years. The city's not been sitting on their hands all these years. We worked to get here. Now listen, there's got to be growth. There's got to be some growth. For the people that have come here and said, oh, I just like it just the way it is, it's not going to be like that. The visitors to the park has increased, what, probably 30% in that period? There's got to be accommodations for these people. You want to house them in Knoxville? That's not fair. This is the people's park. We got to support whatever it takes for the visitors. So keep that in mind as you make your laws and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Mr. Hicker, I'm going to give you the last word if you promise to keep it short.
I'm not short.
But your words could be if you choose.
I'll try to use small ones.
I want to applaud you all for reaching out to the partnership via your resolution and trying to negotiate something that could be very, very bad for Townsend. I think it's a big move. I would encourage you to ignore the false narrative that comes from some of the social media about you all holding all of the cards. I don't think you would have reached out if you felt like you were holding all of the cards. So I'd like for you to keep that in mind when you're voting. I did want to point out that if set up and tear down has to happen in 7 days, it can't include 2 weekends. There's not a calendar that I'm aware of that has 2 weekends within a 7-day period. So that's some of the things that I'm talking about, like come from social media. Another of which is the Blount Partnership is a partnership that is 3 government entities instead of 2 as it was presented to you just momentarily ago. It is Blount County, the City of Maryville, and the City of Alcoa. All 3 governments have to be unanimous in the decisions that make up the IDB. And so social media is causing a lot of difficulty in your all's decision. And I hope that, it definitely appears from what you read on the agreement thing there that there has been considerable amount of work that goes on, because if they were to de-annex, they get to do whatever they want, basically 365 days a year if that happens. And to come up with what you've got there is a significant difference from doing whatever you want 365 days a year. I like seeing that there is the $5,000 annual fee. I think that's pretty cool. I personally would like to see every event held in Townsend charging every participant at least $1 so that Townsend gets proceeds from every special event permit that happens. Every runner, every biker, every special event charging $1 per participant, that hardly any of the participants would notice being missed, but would definitely help your budget. And as for your budget sharing in Blount County's property tax, neither does Maryville nor Alcoa. They implemented their own property tax. Blount County gets its property tax from everybody the way that's what I get to work on in the budget coming up real soon. That's where our budget comes from, and it's about $280 million a year that we're dealing with in Blount County, and some of that does help Townsend whether you see it or not. And anyway, thank you all for trying to work this out. It took an ego swallow, and I appreciate y'all doing that, because I think everybody wins if y'all work this out. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aker. Okay, with that, I'll wrap up the public comment. Commissioners, you've had a chance to look at this. We've had some discussion, answered some questions about it. We've heard from our citizens, from the public. I would ask if there's support for me to continue to work along these lines of what's been described in this memo.
I make a motion to proceed with the proceedings of what you have brought to the table to us today.
Thank you. I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much, and we'll continue to work on this, and I appreciate your support. Appreciate everybody's attention and taking your time this afternoon. We're going to take a quick break in case somebody has to go to the restroom.
Yes.
And then in about 5 minutes, we will start our budget workshop.
You need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, sorry. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.